Hello, everybody. Greetings, welcome, good morning, good afternoon. I'm here with the amazing Peter Lilly. Hello.
Thank you, Barnaby, for the talking to you. This is great.
It's very cool. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to just very quickly, for people who don't know how incredible and prolific you actually are, I'm just going to give a quick rundown, and I'm going to be very lazy and read stuff from your website and probably pepper it with some other thoughts. Peter is an award-winning performer, theatre maker, workshop leader, creative mentor, and director, well known for about 1 million different shows that you've created. I mean, you've got 6 or so listed there on the website, but you've also created a whole bunch more, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. She creates vibrant theatre courses where people learn loads and unlock their performing energy. Her teaching style reflects a synthesis of rich ranges, including influences including Jacques Lecoq, Philippe Gaulier, Monika Pagneaux, Corporeal Mime, Yoshi Oida, Carlo Boso, Commedia, Sankai, Juku, who I saw once and were absolutely incredible. Natsu, Nakajima, which are both Butoh companies, as well as training and directing with Mike Alfreds. And you don't mention this, but you know, you also did a fair amount of work with Desmond Jones back in the day.
Yes,
David
yes, it should be on the list. Yeah, yeah, amazing. Discipline, which we need more mime. And there's a wonderful guy called Les Bubb who I think is starting an online mime school, so people can look
very
him
cool.
up.
Yeah, I know Les a little bit. I've seen him perform. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
Good. So, well, that's kind of the top line. And you know, going back at looking at your biography, Peter, it was just so wonderful to see that kind of richness, going way back to the 70s, where you studied at the Desmond Jones School of Mime, and you got together with these 2 other women, and you formed 3 Women Mime.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you created these amazing shows. So I was wondering if you could just give us a little snapshot of, and you talk about how the Edinburgh Fringe was so different. It was much cheaper and easier, and you could see all this work and amazing work. And just paint us a little picture of what was it like for those of us who've arrived a bit more recently on the scene and kind of dream nostalgically about those days. Was it really that amazing?
Well, it was wonderful because you could go up there and do it's a run, because I came from Australia and I'd be working in theatre and you'd have a 3-week run or more than that, and that's to embed the show, to grow the show, and there you were, doing the length of Edinburgh, and finessing and growing in front of audiences. As for what the festival was like back then, so we did our first, we called ourselves 3 Women Mime, because back then, right at the end, in the very beginning of the 80s, and sort of mime was an up and coming new sort of, this was before physical theatre.
Okay. Before that term even really existed.
No, it came later. And we were, there was a lot of that classical influence of Marcel Marceau. I mean, not to mention Etienne de Creux and all of that, but Marcel Marceau, that illusionistic mime, every man. And we were 3 women. We were going, let's tell stories, or let's show events happening in our lives, women's lives. So, and yeah, go on. You've got a question to ask.
Well, it's just that I suppose that was gender an issue for you then? Were you focusing on let's explore what mime is for women, because it's a male kind of dominated area?
Yeah, it was like most things, the lack of representation. I remember one of my fellow students, and he looked at me one day and he said, I feel sorry for you. He said, because, I can see you're really passionate about this, but you know, you're a woman, so it, you know, it was just like, oh, interesting.
Wow.
So yeah, it was just finding those particular stories, and because it was a form of narrative and a dream space, you could play with things, create new narratives, look at issues, give a response. So that was the joy of that. One of the things we did, I wrote a blog post on it. We did a circus using household equipment. And we were dressed. This shows you how old how times have changed. It was the housewives circus, and we had aprons and headscarves and things like that. And you know, that's a word you don't really hear anymore, do you? No one says the word housewife. And so we were doing we were doing everything with the power of mime. There was, remember those old-fashioned rotary egg beaters?
I've got one.
Well, there you go.
I use it every Sunday to make pancakes.
So I would do, you know, the mime up to the tightrope, and then I sort of pulled out of my apron pocket the rotary egg beaters. So it was like a unicycle going along, you know.
And that was mimed, or was that a real one?
Or a real egg beater, but absolutely zero elevation from the ground.
Right. Brilliant.
And Claudia Prietzel had these too. She was like the strong woman, so she lifted up a wooden rolling pin, you know, and stilt walking, but just with two old wooden brooms, you know, like bush going along as if she was on stilts.
That's ingenious. So it was like women, housewives stuck in the house and imagining themselves as circus performers using sort of everyday objects.
Yeah, I mean, we just showed up as, I don't know what we were, you know, clowns. Tessa was a maker, so Tessa Schneiderman, she made like 2 tea strainers into a goggle, and she had this mob cap on, and the old-fashioned toasting iron with the 2 round things held here like a motorcycle. She was Evel Knievel, and we stole all her little son's toys and put them in the show, you know.
That's brilliant. I love it. You know, when you're making shows, you always end up using the objects that you have around you, don't you? Whatever's there ends up in the show.
Yes, inspiring. That's the beauty of the clown, isn't it? To find the poetry, to find the other uses to subvert things. And like the disappearing act was like a sheet with a peg in it, you know, and doing a stupid thing like that. And just because you were mentioning Edinburgh, this was Theatre Workshop. If people who know it, because I think there's now 2 Theatre Workshop venues in Edinburgh. This was when there was 1. And I think there was a maximum of 3, possibly only 2 spaces in there. And we were in this main space. So that whole multiplex that is Theatre Workshop, we were just, you know, there was just ridiculous how small scale it was.
Simon Kerrigan, who is a very good old friend of mine, says, I remember seeing both PETA and Alison Andrews during the early 90s. It influenced my anarchic attitude to theatre, especially children's theatre. I can totally see that actually now you say that, Simon, in your work. A lot of anarchy. So you've had an influence on a lot of people who are very established now, PETA. That must I don't know, that must feel incredibly rewarding, I imagine.
It's strange because it was the pre-digital era, and you know, I often don't know. Thank you, Simon. You know, you don't often get that, you know, recognition that people do remember. So it's nice. It was so lovely to be doing something new and to be kind of figuring out when I became solo in 1983 and trying to think I called it mime theatre because I didn't know what else to do it, because when we did mime, Desmond would say, but is it mime? And the Tessa Schneiderman was a visual artist, so we had props and we didn't always use speech, but sometimes we did. So it was very experimental.
Right. So would Desmond Jones have said that what you were doing wasn't mime, do you think?
He didn't critique us. He was very supportive. But in the class, he used to do it like exactly like that. But is it mime?
I love it. So what was that definition? What was the line?
Well, I think silence and a black unitard, basically. And the piece had to end with the no, this is a joke. This is a joke. But the silent scream. There was often the silent scream and blackout and a series of short pieces. But we started to challenge that, and I wanted to do longer pieces and work with theatre directors and, other mime artists were doing it too. And then there were people like Trickster Trestle using masks, and before them Trickster Theatre mixing it with drumming and masks and circus skills. So it was bringing together all these skills that Lecoq had rejuvenated. And into what had been largely a very naturalistic default mode of theatre. For all very good reasons, the kitchen sink dramas, which were great because they were representing working class and social issues, but it was very natural. The theatre was mostly naturalism, very different too.
And so you were really kind of helping to rejuvenate that by bringing those other physical forms in, and in some ways also perhaps rejuvenating those forms by kind of subverting them and bringing more theatre craft or things like not wearing a black unitard or not being silent, right? Bringing text in and objects and longer shows. And you mentioned on your website that I think David Glass was a big influence, a piece that you saw him do where he blended things. And I was really interested in that. That blurring of lines between disciplines, and I think you said developing an appetite for new approaches that push me to take a step in a different direction. So you went solo in '83, and was that kind of then the start of this pushing in new directions, and where did that take you?
Well, I had done acting beforehand. So there was a bit of me that sort of hungered for like this longer character arc, while still enjoying the fact that I could act whatever roles I liked, and I could act multiple roles in a show. So, me with my Australian accent and not really going to get the parts in proper theatre. So mine was this amazing
interesting
way of ownership and expressing one's own concerns and issues and motivating forces and compulsions and obsessions and questions. You asked me something else and I've forgotten.
Well, it's okay. What were some of the shows that back in those days that really stand out for you? Because I made a list here. After you went solo, there's Red Heart, then there's Hiroshima Mon Amour, Beg, Porter's Daughter, Topless, Midriff, Invocation, what else? Chastity Belt, Imperfection. What out of all those shows sort of really stands out for you?
Let's see. Well, Beg was pretty exciting. I think by now I don't know what I was. I think I was calling myself Peter Lilly and Company. I made a show before that that was a two-hander with Philip Pallou, who's a member of Showstoppers, the amazing improv musical people, and we made a show called Low Fidelity, and then Beg was directed by David Glass, and it had a minimal set. Ray Smith, the amazing designer Ray Smith, made the design for the show. It was in response to, because Tarantino cinema was becoming very exciting at that time. And I had, when I began with Mime, it was sort of like, oh, how much can you do with how little? And particularly when I became solo, because 3 women, we just got more and more and more and more props. And then I went, well, what can I do with less? I'd seen this amazing Rose English. Is she still making work? She was just amazing. And the first thing I saw of hers had nothing, and it had this completely transparent, no fourth wall. I mean, she even ran around the audience and spoke out loud to the technician, and all of these things I just found so exciting. But then after a while, I ended up at one point with Frightened of Nothing. I had a set made of metal that came apart and could travel in the back of a Renault 5. So I sort of moved up again towards having more props rather than less. But Beg was a very empowering show, working in a sort of David Cronenberg, schlock horror, David Cronenberg, David Lynch influences, and the use of lighting, and developing a thriller horror storyline with just 2 performers, and while still having a very strong dream component and a fairy tale component. And I mean, it was set in a hospital. She was a doctor, and Ray Smith made, one of those IV stands, and it had a bag of red, the blood, and a bag of white, like the saline drip or the see-through. And then there were roses twining up around it. So it was using a lot of fairy tale. And at the end, my character had this amazing rant where she's a murderess. I remember I wanted it to be, there's a killer on the loose. And David Glass said, why don't you be the killer? And I said, well, women aren't, statistically, women aren't. And he said, it's a better part. And I said, I'm listening. And, and it was just this very interesting piece. And there was a lot of Kensington Supergore, the blood. I'm doing that because that's what Philippe Gaulier used to do. He used to have these bags of plastic bags full of the blood, and he would squirt them at the audience. So he'd be lying on the floor, and I'd be standing over him with hedge clip rubber gloves, black bikini, rubber gloves, and hedge clippers at the end, doing this speech about, and the handless maiden grew her hands again, and this and that, and she could spin the straw into gold, stitch after stitch after stitch. So that was a woman that would like kill men, give them a muscle relaxant, sew a dog inside them. Because she was looking to have the perfect man who would have faithful, obedient, and loving qualities of a dog as well as a man.
Is this the one where you wore dog masks, or was that another one? Am I getting mixed up with another show?
A dog mask?
I think that was another show.
Yeah, something else.
Yeah.
No, it started.
You just mentioned dogs.
Sorry, go
on. Well, I'm just kind of like so struck by the overriding style of the shows. I'm getting this feeling of this kind of grotesque kind of it seems like you're very interested in this dark side of humanity, of yourself, playing a murderer, playing with blood. It's kind of like and I know that well, actually, here's a question. At what point did you start calling it clown your work?
Oh, okay. So I wasn't always like interested in the grotesque for its own sake. That was a place that working with David Glass took me to. I mean, Wendy Darling. I've always been interested in sort of the underbelly, though. Wendy Darling, the story of Peter Pan, told by the 30-year-old Wendy coming back at the end of the Great War, when all the boys that J.M. Barrie wrote Peter Pan about were killed in the Great War, and she comes back to a spare, empty nursery, you know, just like a curtain rail hanging, and then there was a wooden chest, and
it's bleak. It's bleak.
Well, yeah, it was very severe. You know, she comes in, she's wearing a suit, she had a crocodile handbag, and bit by bit, everything came out. The Wonderland came out. Music bleeds in, and there was everything. The mermaids were there. The sheet got wrapped around my lower half. There's a mermaid. You can create all these images. You know, there was a conch shell. There was a this and that. And then and of course we had this beautiful doll's house. And the lid could come off, and Wendy flew away, you know, so I sort of stripped down to sort of 1930s underwear as Peter Pan looking, and Peter Pan with because the Lost Boys were dark, you know, those. So it's the underbelly. When I wrote my play, The Porter's Daughter, it was, you know, I wanted to look at what success was. That was kind of exercising that needed to be exorcised in me. And so I created the lowest character in the play as the porter. And so below him, gave him a daughter. Who doesn't even have a name. She's just called Woman, and she gets through the plot of Shakespeare's play. You know, carried, she becomes the lover. Her real love gets taken from her by Lady Mac. He was one of the grooms. Lady Mac killed the grooms as well as Duncan, and or was it? Anyway, one of them. I can't remember just now. So it's sort of the underbelly of this story. So So it's not that I kind of got all these different branches. So it's not that I summed it all up and it's clown, but clowning. I first worked with Philippe Gaulier in 1984. And I thought, this is wonderful, because I had always loved laughter. So I think it was my second solo show, which was made up of two pieces, second or third solo show, I can't remember, which had Hiroshima Mon Amour. No attempt. I didn't realize that one shouldn't really do that with the title of something else. I just thought, well, it's just fringe theatre, you know.
Yeah, the naivety of youth.
Yeah, but there's luckily I knew someone who was a literary agent at the time, and he said, so long as you're not attempting to pass off, there is no copyright on titles. And it was such a good title, and it has a really good payoff at the end, and there's this kind of raddled Australian Edith Piaf impersonator who does this very clumsy, but ends up, she's very heroic. It's ludicrous and it's very kitschy. So why am I telling you about that? So there were all these, and it was around about that time that Philippe Gaulier did this workshop in London, where there was Rick Kemp, Thaler McDermott, John Wright, was Nigel Jameson there? Sorry if I'm forgetting anyone. A wonderful solo performer called Annie Griffiths, and we were John Lee, all these clown practitioners, and we were in the room with Gaulier, who at that time couldn't speak English. And I just thought, this is it. I'd already worked with Lecoq, but at the British Summer School of Mime Theatre, but Gaulier would say, no, look at your, look at your friend, look at the audience, then answer, then look at the and I was going, there's ways, there's this craft. There's this craft, and like learning about the rule of three. And when I went back to performing, that's why I was talking about Hiroshima Mon Amour, because it was already quite funny, but I was suddenly able to do, I'm not just going to look at Edith Piaf's portrait with its little fairy lights surrounding it. I'm not going to do it twice. I'm going to do it a third and maybe a fourth time. And then you would get this exponential laugh.
Yeah.
So when John Towson kindly was asking, you know, he made a directory of female clown performers, and I describe myself as a sort of hybrid clown, because shows like Chastity Belt, which I didn't really think of as clown, but when I would, you know, perform them sometimes when you're developing the work at a sort of living room theatre situation. Claire, Darry and Colin, what Key's living room theatres that they were doing. And, you know, and you asked the audience questions, what would you describe it at? And someone said, I would describe it as dark clowning. And I was going, really? You think that's dark? Sort of clowning with an edge. I just love the way humour can help you deal with difficult things. I mean, we liked that with Three Women. We knew that we could do things that, because nowadays, I almost fell over a few years back when I was going, oh, there's a feminist theatre festival at Camden People's Theatre, because we used to like try and not say the word.
Right.
Marketing wise.
Yeah. Or the word clown as well.
And the word mime. All mime is a 4-letter word. So the clowning, sort of linking it, I think that for me there's you know, the outsideriness. You know, even though, look at me, I'm white, vaguely middle class, and, you know, with all those privileges, but the sort of misfit feeling of having come from Australia but making the UK my home, you know, misfit outside of you, the underbelly of things, and clown is great for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we all sort of I think of clowns as a community of misfits, you know, a community who couldn't fit into any other community somehow. Yeah. And they just they found the clowns and realized that was their community.
Yes. And the I remember going to visit David Glass, who was doing a workshop somewhere in out in Barcelona, and I was picked up at the airport, and then we were traveling through Barcelona, and there's like gorgeous people, beautifully dressed, you know, like wonderful. And then we kind of pulled up at this sort of a park or something, some parkland where there was a tent, and then walked inside the tent, and there they were, the tall, the short, the googly-eyed, and I was going, I'm home. My clown mime workshop.
I just want to remind people to that please put your questions into the comments, because this is your chance to ask PETA anything you want. She is a mine and a mine of much knowledge and information, and I'm having a great time talking to you, but there might be some other questions that people have that I don't think of. So please, you know, or comments, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So we started to talk a little bit about the dark clown there, and I wanted to kind of steer the conversation towards that. And you alluded to the genesis of that. Was it that person's comment specifically when they described it as dark clown, and you were like, oh, that's a good thing?
No, because I was already, I started, it was 1980. People who've done workshops with me have heard this multiple times. It was 1980, and I was at the ICA in London, and there was a show by Pip Simmons Theatre Group, and it was called Andi Musique. And there was one scene inside the show. It was largely, it was a very, very fantastic, brave, bold, thrilling piece of work. And there was one scene in it where there was this guy dancing grotesquely and looking at the audience with this particular gaze, and with a shaven head, beating himself on the head with a metal tea tray, and dancing in this desperate and sort of gangly, grotesque way. And it was, and I had this particular laugh that we all laughed, the audience laughed. There was this particular quality of laughter that what we were watching was at the same time hilarious and horrific. It was not. It took away none of the horror of the situation, that because of the context of the play, that the character, the predicament that they were in, and yet we were able to laugh. And so I was already teaching. I started teaching clown. Very soon after going to Gaulier, these kind of weird accidents that guide your life. Someone phoned back in the days of the, ancient analog
old phones,
landline phone. How did they
what a quaint thing that was.
I know. Someone phoned and said, I need someone to lead, a clown workshop for women. And I said, really? I've only just studied with the master, Philippe Gaulier, and everything. And,
wow, pressure.
Yeah, what about Annie Stainer? What about Frankie Anderson? And she just kept saying, I don't know why, she kept saying it has to be you. So I said, well, I will do. I made copious notes, and I was used to teaching already because I was doing a lot of mime teaching. Anyway, it went well. And I thought, I get to laugh, get to shout at people in a playful and pedagogic way, and for the best of purposes. And so and then because of having had this experience of seeing this amazing scene and this quality of laughter, and I was seeking to re-find it. So I'd get to the end of the final afternoon of a clown course, and I'd say, would you like to do an experiment? And luckily people always said yes. And so I experimented with various things and gradually built up an approach to what I call dark clown, because hey, it's just two words. Anyone could describe dark clowning as any number of things. So
sure.
I mean, even today someone was saying something to me about, the Pennywise from It, and I said, it's not creepy clown, it's not cynical clown, it's not grumpy clown, it's not killer clown, it's not scary clown. What I teach when I teach dark clown, and the whole setup of that, all the exercises, the outcome, the theory. I don't know if I'm qualified to talk about theory, but the purpose, the aim and the purpose is to extend red-nosed clown. Oh, look at you. your wonderful online skills. So the red-nosed clown, by which, I just mean it's just a big divider between dark clown and other kinds of clown, because there's so many kinds of clown. But which one is this? Because if red-nosed clown, although we were saying the clown is the outsider, the clown has all the humanity that the sad normals really try to resist showing, right? The clown is kind of more human or more humane than humans often.
Right.
And so you've got this continuum of human expression, and you've got silliness, bossiness, loveliness, enthusiasm, and grumpiness, maybe moments of rage, and then moving over to the realms of what I call the marginalized emotions of hypervigilance, fear, distress, shame, anguish, regret, guilt, humiliation, grief, shock, absurdity, dread, despair, physical pain, horror, terror, and existential dread, roughly.
Yeah. I love how you just rattle those things off. Like, pain, horror, existential dread,
Yeah.
And so I wanted to put this up, Peter, on this document, because I think it's just quite fascinating. And there are things there that you would expect, and then things that I'm like, what is that? So I'm wondering, for example, implicate the audience and enforced performance. What could you explain what you mean by those?
So this quality of laughter that I experienced back in 1980, I've come to call troubled laughter.
Mm.
So it's not a laugh at suffering. It is a laugh while witnessing suffering. It's because we know this is a theatre form, right? It's a theatre form. It's not reality.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very clear whenever I teach dark clown, very passionately clear about stating that the purpose of this work is not to make fun of suffering or of people who have suffered. It is to give audiences the experience of having the opportunity to have the experience of this troubled laughter, whereby you're laughing, you're witnessing something awful, but you're able to make a noise. You're making you're able to give voice to something that, you know, otherwise you're going, oh, that's terrible, you know, and you go to that place of speechlessness where it's, you know, the trauma's held inside, or you're pushing it away, or it's drama and it makes you cry. But this is when things are so awful, as so many things sadly in our world are, that it's so awful that those emotional responses aren't enough. You really need this. It's like absurd. It's absurd and obscene that these things happen. So one of the things in order to generate this laughter is to somehow have the audience on the hook. So I knew I was in a theatre at the ICA, but I was going, oh, I'm witnessing this thing.
So implicate in the sense of you're not making them feel like they're to blame necessarily, but that they're involved or they're on the hook in some way.
Yeah, am I using the word implication wrong? But you're kind of embroiled in it. You're somehow responsible. Not respond. You're involved. You're involved. And they're suffering and you're not.
So does Buffon sort of come close to this? Because I think that some Buffon that I've seen is very edgy in that way and deals with some very dark subjects and kind of points the finger in a way at the audience where you're like, it's hilarious, and you feel like you're totally being made fun of at the same time.
As the audience, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So this is the thing. Yeah, I thought I loved when I learned Gaulier's Buffon work, and but the Buffon plays satire.
Yeah. Okay.
The dark clown, what I describe as dark clown, doesn't have the luxury of playing satire.
Oh, that's a great distinction. That's so lovely. Okay. Can you just clarify a little bit more? What do you mean? Let's just unpack satire and why the dark clown doesn't have that luxury.
Well, with satire, you're putting it on the observer or on some power, some
it's critique of critical
class, some kind of critique. You've got some target, some kind of target. So the dark clown, this is where the enforced performance comes in. There are applications of dark clown that don't include enforced performance, but enforced performance is one of the key exercises that helps people to get there. So
can you describe that exercise?
Yeah. Enforced performance is, in general, before the exercise, is when you're having to do things at gunpoint. When people are having to, like this guy was doing, he was having to dance, he was having to perform for his captors.
Right.
So you're kind of selling yourself out. So all of that, you know how we love to see the micro expressions in the eyes of the red-nosed clown where they're like, where they're thinking and their moments of mischief or venality.
Which is one of the reasons that online clowning is quite interesting, because you get that close up that you often don't in a theatre. Just as a side note.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah. So, oh dear. So one of the first exercises I did, which of course I can't do online, but I found other ways around it. I go in via the high stakes predicaments. High stakes is on that chart there. But there was this exercise of like I teach a kind of shunting dance. So they've got this kind of machine. So it's a bit like if it's red-nosed clown, the clown, you can do a lovely exercise where it's running in a circle. And you've got the 4 cardinal points, and you can do a funny thing on the 3 or the 9, just some little a trip on that, and that goes round and round. So it's like a machine for mistakes, and it's generating a kind of energy and all tension and release, and all of that is happening.
I like that.
And so I did a shunting dance. You know what I mean? Like you're just sort of flicking your hips, and then you kind of shunt forward on your feet
without walking. You're just letting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear my squeaky chair?
Yeah. It might be mine.
What?
It might be mine.
Yes, or it might be my hips. I don't know. So
that's dark.
So there's a lineup, which already is a kind of, no one feels great in a lineup.
Well.
Because it's like firing, so, and then they come and they have to work as a team. So often in these horrific torture regimes, people are being forced to do something. They're being forced to invigilate each other, that my safety, the person next to me could do something that could make them shoot them and miss, shoot me as punishment for their mistake. So there's this kind of high stakes hypervigilance. So this shunting forward as far as they dare go, and then all they can do is run back. So it's not again, but it's again, it's a high stakes predicament, or a predicament. It's like the myth of Sisyphus. That's all you've got. It's existentialism. It's just surviving. You're surviving the next 30 seconds of your life. I wrote a poem about it, early days. So you get people working as a team. You get people to pretend to believe in this pretend situation, which has similarities in real life, but we're pretending it's in some absurd realm where they force performers to perform. And part of the implication is that when the audience laugh, they're surprised into laughter by the clever and adroit and agile use of comedy craft.
Okay. So
I teach a lot of comedy craft, which has got everything from rhythms to tiny pauses to sound motifs, to a great interest in musicality, and a great interest in people being able to accurately replicate what just happened just before the laugh.
Yeah.
So if there's a particular that caused a laugh, if there's a particular weird sound of psychological and or physical suffering that for some reason has a thing. Sorry, the last one was a bit too red-nosed clown. But there's a sound, and if it does generate a laugh, then you look and go, what kind of world is this? The performer looks at the audience as if they're invited guests in this torture realm where people are rolled out to perform.
Like, how could you laugh at that? Is that kind of look?
Yes, how could you laugh at that? But not going, how could you laugh at that? Because then you'd be shot. Yeah. Possibly dead. You'd either be shot in an arm or a foot.
So you look like, how could you laugh at that, and then repeat the thing that made them laugh?
Yes. So Gaulier used to say clowning is not acting. And when I teach at drama schools, I say, yes, clowning is not acting, but it will make you a better actor, which I think most people agree on, because it brings those, it doesn't work for everybody. There are some actors, natural actors, who for them, it doesn't link up that way. But for most people, it brings greater awareness of the self, of the other, and a greater listening for the audience, and a greater control over your rhythms and impulse, a greater ability to pick up impulses. Oh God, what am I talking about? What was I just talking about?
This is brilliant. And so you have, and you also, I think, mentioned that this comedy craft is very
comedy
important.
craft. And with Dark Clown, I say so clowning is not acting. Dark Clown does require a bit of acting. But I always say, you don't have to have been to drama school. By acting, by what acting? I mean every human's innate ability to pretend. And you learn to pretend really well. You pretend. No emotional recall, please. No emotional recall. We're not going there. People who want to explore their demons, shadow work is a beautiful thing, but already the material's dark enough. Don't.
So it's more of an external mimicry.
Yes, my phrase that I use, which was too big, I think, to go on that poster thing, a believable verisimilitude of pain and distress is what I say.
You have some really wonderful turns of phrase. I love it. I'm going to write that down and use it.
And try and do it. And try and do it. A believable verisimilitude of pain and distress.
Well, it's even hard to say. I think I'm just going to start with trying to
likeness, but there's something about the word that pleases me. So when the performer, so it's the job of the person playing the Dark Clown, and we get there it's a step-by-step process, because there's a lot, and it's unusual, right? It's unusual. It doesn't. There's no heritage for it, so it's new. So you're learning all these things, and it's not really what you think, and then you build it up so that when in this moment of this exercise that's an in-person exercise, when they hear the audience and they look, they stay within the reality of the believed of the pretended high stakes predicament, the pretended horrific situation.
Yeah, got it. So that is the exercise. It reminds me a little bit of an exercise, a ramped up version of an exercise that I think I learned from John Davison, which is called Theatre Manager, I think it's called. And so you have some people on stage, and there's a theatre manager who has a stick or some weapon, and they're behind a screen so that they can't see the audience. Oh no, sorry. They're standing on the other side of a screen, so they can see the audience. The theatre manager can see the audience, but they can't see the performers. And the theatre manager is watching the audience. And the people on stage have to do anything to entertain the audience.
Yes.
And make them laugh. And if the theatre manager sees the audience not laughing, if the audience stops laughing, he comes out onto stage and hits the performers and then goes back behind the screen. And it's brilliant, because as soon as the performers get hit, their reaction immediately makes the audience laugh.
Yes.
And kind of like propels them into something which is nearly always bizarre and hilarious.
Yes.
So it sounds a bit like that, this idea, but you've taken it to a new level with this sort of, we're in a torture situation, and it's a bit more
a torture situation, or if it's not enforced performance, it's something like, so dealing with one of the marginalized emotions is regret, deep regret. You did something awful, and so you use this. I shouldn't have done it. 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 I shouldn't have. And so through repetition, I should not have done it. I should not have. So through you build it. It's like Lazzi. It's a gag. It's going to the next level. It's sort of calling back things. It's snowballing things. It's all clown craft.
Yeah.
And suffering suffering. Red-nosed clowns are suffering all the time in that exercise that you're talking about. Yeah, they're being beaten. You know, medieval times, beating with the bladder. But this is going. You know, just allows us to witness. Okay, so the micro expression. One of the things, you know, in these awful things that have happened in history. So people have done awful things to survive. You know, in room 101 at the end of 1984, he says, "Do it to Julia."
Yeah.
Winston says, "Do it to Julia," and it was kind of this. All is a lot of it is kind of born out of my childhood and early adulthood horror of, if I were tortured, what would I do?
Right.
And to see people calibrating and calculating that. So someone says something that means someone else gets shot. They're not actually shot. I don't shoot people. But there's someone else in the scene gets shot. And then they have to live with what they've done.
Right.
So to see that. Because otherwise these big horrific events are so awful, we just numb out. But if we can at least pay honor to some of this stuff and also go into it and embody it.
Yeah.
So we're not resisting it.
Yeah, I love it. I love that. I mean, to me, it feels like an extension of red-nosed clowning, because for me, red-nosed clowning, because I studied with Sue Morrison originally, was always embracing the dark as well as the light. So it wasn't just the light and the joyous and celebratory. It was always like, actually, we need to go into those dark places that people fear and dread, and we need to embody those for the audience and bring them into that. I just want to read a quick question that somebody put on the chat. Elena, she said, "I'm currently teaching physical theatre to circus students. I want to do more clown with them, and I'm looking for approachable ways to start. You mentioned more technical approaches, and I think many of them would respond to that rather than the come on stage and connect with the audience and make us laugh approach. Any thoughts on places to start with students who are not clown students per se, but who could benefit from clowning?" What do you think? It's a tricky one.
So Eleanor she's not in a position to teach them clowning. Well, mime.
Right.
Mime, and so I use a lot I teach the takes, you know, take, double take, triple take, quadruple take, you know.
Yeah.
So you're working rhythm and you're working clarity. You know, because if the audience can see it, they can understand it.
But do you have to be able, as a teacher, for those kinds of things, do you have to be able to demonstrate it really well? Like, you have to know how to do a double take really well to be able to show, or a trip, or whatever. You can't do that. So I don't know if Elena has those skills or not.
This is Elena Day, right? Is this Elena Day?
Yes. Do you know her?
Yeah. Hi, Elena. If
so
it's the same Elena Day that I think it is.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah. And there's, I also enjoy, you know, like body isolations, which are hard over Zoom. But and this came from mime, and from working with the Corporeal Mime, which I did with Théâtre de Mouvement, who were amazing. They articulated the torso in this brilliant way. So, and because for me, all the emotions are in the torso, the higher emotions, the heart, the solar plexus, the guts, and then the lower depths, and then the base chakra, the survival. So, you know, giving and receiving impulses is is a nice thing. It's a kind of hard one to answer, Elena. If you have a follow-up question, that could be helpful.
I always find that just game playing is good to get people into this idea of risk taking. I mean, I just love the dynamic of certain playground games like grandmother's footsteps and, you know, ball throwing games where you're kind of playing on that edge of really, really wanting to win. You have to want to win the game, but you also have to be prepared to lose, because in trying really, really hard, you're bound to trip yourself up at some point. And in a way, that's the idea, to trip yourself up in a way that feels spontaneous, because you are actually trying so hard to win that you trip yourself up, you know? But an understanding that for an audience, it's not interesting or funny when you're playing safe, that you have to play on that razor thin edge of danger, of risk, where you can fall flat in your face.
I think that's great. And exercises where things get layered up and up and up, even just a simple thing like going across the floor in a pair, and they have to do whether it's open 2 3 4, close 2 3 4, whether it's down up up down up, and whatever it is, and you give the instructions. You have to notice everything about your partner and everything about the audience and keep the rhythm. And you see people, they want to slow the rhythm down. They never look at their partner. They don't see the audience at all. So if you really hector them, because circus people, I work with the wonderful Lost in Translation circus, and they have, particularly people who are doing the more death-defying stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, they play, come on, play. Okay, now let's do this hymn. And they go, okay. So I will, because they have to, because it's life and death. So if Elena can find ways that are away from their discipline, get them sort of away from their discipline with multiple challenges, so that, you know, it's so that the lid comes off in a way. Or like you say, the ball game, you know, that you know, where you're throwing the ball and then you're in a circle and then you put in more balls, and so that they end up with almost as many balls as there are people. And the more balls you put in, actually people get much better at catching. It's weird.
And I love that exercise you described earlier with the running round and you know, little rhythmic trips or whatever at different points around the circle. And presumably you could also build in a look at the audience into that. Run, trip, look, keep going. Don't destroy the underlying rhythm. Have a little hiccup in the rhythm, but here's another phrase: the immediate and immaculate resumption of the original rhythm. Once you get that, did that come out of your head, or did you just...
I mean, I always say it. There's the kind of the passage of one rhythm, and then something I don't know where they got it from, but I learnt it from what were they called? Mime Action Project, the wonderful Andy Dawson and Gavin Robertson, and they would demonstrate there, and then halfway through, exactly on center stage, you change the rhythm, or and then the other one, tiny trip, succinct trip, immediate and immediate. So rather than trip and then, you know, it's the end of the story, but tiny trip, immediate and immaculate resumption. So it's like a machine. There you go to Bergson's machine, you know, all these different theories that are not sufficient in and of themselves, but each offer.
I did a lovely exercise with Bill Irwin once, and where it was a bit like the circle thing you described, but it was really hard. He got us to do stuff that would, like, gosh, he just made it look so easy, and you would get up to do it and it was like really hard, like going up a set of steps and missing, you know, where you kind of go and you try and do it and it's really tough. And the one he just that's similar to the circle, where you go around and you trip as if you tripped over a wire or something. You look back at what had tripped you, you know, clock it, and maybe look at the audience, and then you go round again, and this time you look at the audience and you jump over it.
And then you trip somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. And then you keep running and then you trip. But there's endless possibilities and variations with that.
I once saw someone who set off and he tripped, walked normally, tripped.
I mean, you could just create a whole show of different variations of that.
Well, the beautiful Joss Huben.
Oh yeah, right. I mean, a great
Have
example.
You seen it? what's it called? Something, I can't remember what it's called now. And it basically diagnoses comedy in his own way in this beautiful show. And he talks about, you know, that thing of the trip and then the look, the trip and then the look back, you blame the floor kind of thing, that just looking back. And he describes it as like evolutionary, billions of years to become an upright mammal, and then you trip. So it's kind of funny at the level of DNA.
I love Yosubin. I did a little one-off workshop with him in Vienna one time, and it was beautiful.
Genius,
yeah. Brian says, I thought I read you had a book coming out. Is that true?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah. Well, I need the time to write it. I'm going for a Develop Your Creative Practice application to get, because it's time consuming. So we'll see. You know, I've been blogging, and it's definitely, I want it to happen. I need it to happen.
Does it have a title?
Yes. Hang on. Let me just show you what the title is. The title is, it's just Troubled Laughter, the Practice of Dark Clown. You'd think I'd know that, wouldn't you?
That's beautiful. I love that. And just a little while ago in the comments, Lee wrote, Troubled Laughter. I love that. So it's catchy.
Good.
Troubled Laughter, the technique of dark clown. Did you say?
The practice.
The practice of dark clown.
I mean, that's what I've just made up for myself. I make myself little posters, you know, as inspirational things. And
well, you know, I'm dying for that book to come out. So please get on and write it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, go on the blog. There's a Ko-fi fund. Maybe if I don't get the Develop Your Creative Practice, and many people would give me enough money through, you know, coffee, whatever it is.
Or can they buy? You know, we could buy copies in advance or something, because we could. You know, if everyone bunged in 20 quid and then you write it, and then you get a book out of that.
I like the way
Lee's also dying for that book. Yeah. Well, I'm very hopeful that you'll get that grant, because
thank you.
That I think that my sense is that the Arts Council wants to give money to people. So I think we're kind of coming towards the end of our time, Peter, even though I feel like we talked about a fraction of the things that I wanted to talk about. Maybe we could just talk just very, very briefly to finish up, like what's coming up for you other than writing that book. What do you have coming up, teaching-wise or performance-wise, that people would love to know about?
Thank you. Well, I've got, I don't know, there's probably only about one place left on it, what I call barefaced. I'm a big fan of mask wearing to keep other people safe, but barefaced Commedia dell'Arte online on Zoom, because we can't work with the masks. I can't pass them through the ether to you. So that's coming up from the 8th to the 11th of October. There might be a space left on that, and we do 10 of the archetypes. You get to embody them, learn about them, physicalize them. Then I'm doing Clown and Dark Clown online in the global classroom. People from India, people from Hawaii, people from Norway, people from Sweden, Finland. So that's the 19th to the 22nd of November. And that's currently booking. You can go to peterlilly.com. There's courses or Peter Lilly Theatre Workshops page on Facebook.
I'm going to put that link just into the comments so that people
thanks. And then there'll be peterlilly.com, the online courses. And then there'll be a Dark Clown Level 2 course, which you have to do the Clown and Dark Clown course for, from the 10th to the 13th of December. That's not been advertised yet. So if you're interested and you get in and you do the 19 to 22 November course, then you're all set. for the level 2 dark clown, because I don't do those so often because people need to have done the first one.
So it's interesting. I'm assuming from those dates that you do a kind of very intensive thing. You do several days consecutively. Have you found that's a good way to teach online?
Yeah, online, 3 hours a day is enough. 3 hours.
But on consecutive days rather, because I've been tending to do it once a week for 4 weeks or 8 weeks. But you find this better, like 4 days in a row?
Yeah, I don't know. It suits me. I like it. Some people prefer, something that they can go to once a week. It depends on people's schedules, but because I would teach these like weekend or 2-day courses, and it's the same. It's still 12 hours, but it's 3 hours on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So it adds up to 12 hours. I like it. It keeps the momentum going when it's something like clown and dark clown, and there's a lot of principles to remember and a lot of mechanics to learn. However, I will in Colombia be doing it on 2 weekends, on the 23rd and 24th of October, and then again on the 30th and 31st, and that's because of people having jobs and not being able to, only being able to do weekends and things like that. So that's newish for me.
So if you're Colombian, if anybody is, well, not just Colombian, in fact, because it's going to be online, you don't have to be Colombian.
But you have to. It helps if you speak Spanish. It'll be not simultaneous. Well, a bit of simultaneous translation. It'll be translated in the chat apparently. Which is nice. But yeah, anyone could join that one. And then there's the one with me, the 19th to the 22nd.
Very cool. I'm very tempted to take one of these myself. These look amazing.
Oh, come along. Come along.
What's your how many people do you have a cap numbers?
Yes. I can't remember. I think I said something like, I think we eventually agreed on 14
for your.
Yeah, I've done maximum 16 online. I would say, to give everyone, I make the workshops as interactive as possible, and there's a lot of breakout rooms where people can get to know each other and feel like they've connected. When I'm teaching in person, whenever that happens again, I used to go up to about 22. But 16, 18 in the room is a nice number. So 14 to 16 online.
And does everyone get to have a little sort of stage time on their own? I mean, I say stage time because we're in our own rooms.
Yes.
On this little square, which is the equivalent of stage time.
That's right. Well, what I've developed, it builds up to it builds up to, because there's a lot to learn on the Clown and Dark Clown course, but by the end of it, most people have done a two or what I call the Dark Clown scenarios. It might be a 1. So for example, the consumer guilt scenario, and they have to clock the boxes. We do a lot of clocking, really overclocking, because that's a little rhythmic thing that's useful, but it also helps with the implication of the audience multi-purpose. So yeah, they do get to work with a whole audience, and then they get to do little breakout. I break things down as much as possible, so they're just practicing that. They're just practicing that in the room, but they still have, it's still fun to do, fun and frightening to do in the breakout rooms. Occasionally there's the odd exercise with 3 or 4 that they can do in a breakout room, so they get to see each other. But yeah, there are some in plenary, and then more so of that in the level 2 Dark Clown.
Great. Well, yeah, as I say, I'm quite tempted because, in some ways I feel like my kind of origins in clown were very much the kind of were the sort of internal inner clown exploration, and how you kind of learn to express that, and that the technicalities of comedy is something that I've kind of come to more recently. So I'm really kind of curious and would love to learn from you. If not this time, then on another occasion.
And of course, you need both.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I've come to realize.
Yeah, you need both. You need that openness. It works best in dark clown when we really, people have got that openness to have that little moments, little beats of humiliation and desperation, and not to hurry past them. It's the same thing as in Red-Nosed Clown, not to be jumping ahead. And then, the technicality. So that's the thing, because most people, when you say, why did you laugh at that? They will say, because it was funny. And they don't realize the amount of craft that's involved in this physiological event of laughter. And so we use that in a very benign way, not in a Machiavellian way, but we use that so that people can laugh in these dark predicaments, which gives us more time to kind of, I don't know, contemplate. And if it's not too grandiose to say, it's sort of honor, people who are in these extreme situations in reality,
I love that idea. Yeah. Yeah. We're kind of connecting with them.
We get to sort of go, oh shit, that must have been awful. How devastating.
Yeah.
How devastating. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for being with me today and with everyone else who is listening. It's been really, really fascinating. I just love you. I love your precision with everything, with the way you speak about things and the language you use, and clearly in your performance work and teaching, there's a great kind of level of detail and precision that's just, I really admire that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a great journey to get there. That specificity is there for the work to happen respectfully. And for people to be as safe as people can possibly be in a creative situation. So it's built up over the years. This was meant to be a conversation, and well, we did chat a bit. I long for an opportunity to talk more with you about your approach to clowning, the Sue Morrison approach. I mean,
yeah, we'll talk. There'll be lots more opportunities to talk. At some point, maybe I'll come back round and do everyone again next year.
That's right. Yeah, come around again, and each of us interview you.
Oh no, it'll just be the same boring stuff over and over again. But there's comic value in repetition, right? So maybe that would be good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, well, I'm gonna say goodbye to everybody. Oh, and just a very quick mention for folks who are still listening. Tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a live solo, which is very scary, very short one, talking about, it's a big secret, but I'm going to let you into the secret right now because you're here and you're privileged. On Monday, I'm launching a new course, which is called Clown Creation Studio. And this is a course for people who actually want to create a clown turn or routine or a show. And it's kind of a mentorship. It's like a creative mentorship where I mentor and direct your show or your routine or whatever you're working on. And you can join for a certain amount of time or however long you want to be in it to create your piece. So join me tomorrow at this exact same time that we talked today, which is 9 o'clock for me. I think it's 12 o'clock on the East Coast, 5 o'clock in the UK, and 6 for other European people. And I'm going to give all the details tomorrow about that. So if you're interested and you want to make a piece and you want my support with that, then tune in tomorrow. All right. Thanks again, Peter. And I look forward to talking again very soon.
Thank you so much for making this happen, Barnaby. Thank you.
Okay. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.